And good morning, everyone. We are back. Welcome to another informational webinar in a brand new year. Happy New Year, Adrian.
Happy New Year, John.
It's good to be back. It's good to be back. 2021, all systems are go. If you're just tuning in or you haven't visited any of our webinars before, my name is John Hovey, and I'm the Special Projects Coordinator at North Metro SBDC. And I'm here today with Adrian Hovey. He's my brother, and he's one of our consultants here at North Metro SBDC. And you can find out all about what we offer at northmetrosbdc.com. We have free consulting for small businesses. We have free and low-cost education. Very excited about a new program coming up just in 3 weeks. We're starting our digital marketing boot camp. It's a 6-week program guaranteed to take your marketing to the next level, and that'll be taught by our marketing consultant and digital marketing dude, Peter Brissett. So please do visit our website and check that out. Today, however, we're going to be talking about something else. We're going to be talking about strategic planning for the new year. And this is going to be a very important topic for you as we enter the new year. Look forward, getting all of your planning in alignment so that hopefully you can make the most out of any opportunities that come your way. Like always, we have our question and answer feature going on here on the webinar. So we do have your microphones muted and your cameras off just for a more quick and pleasant streaming experience. But we do encourage you at any moment to go to the right side of your panel if you're on a computer, or at the bottom of your screen if you're on a mobile device, and find either the chat feature or the question feature and type in your questions at any point. And yeah, we'll try to answer those along the way and hopefully get you the information you need. I'm seeing a lot of people logging in right now, so it's very exciting. Adrian, why don't you go ahead and take it away? Tell us a little bit about what we're going to be learning today.
You bet. Thanks, John. Happy New Year, everybody. It is great to see the back of 2020 from my standpoint. I don't know about everybody else, but I hope you guys are all healthy and happy out there. Strategic planning, the new year is the perfect time to get into this. And so my background is, I have an MBA, and I've been helping people, create strategic plans for the last 10 plus years, whether that's through the university, through my work at Edward Jones, and through my volunteer work here at the SBDC. So I'm kind of an old hat with this. So I have some very passionate thoughts about strategic planning, but I recognize everybody has their own experience, and I want this to be as much about you guys as it is about my own experience. So please type those questions in there, engage. The more we can have a conversation today, I think the more you guys will get out of it. But that being said, I do have some topics that I really want to cover and just make sure that I give you guys some best practices and some actionable steps that you can use to lay the foundation of your planning and really make it an iterative process that you can refine and improve over time. Okay. All right. So where I like to start, it being January, which is fantastic, but I think that in my experience, people are not confused maybe, but they don't necessarily understand the difference between some key components of a strategic plan. So vision, strategy, goal, and tactic. I want to talk about these 4 things first. So John, you can kind of, maybe you've seen some of this working with some of the other folks at SBDC, but basically it's kind of almost like a waterfall. And I want to spend a minute talking about the difference between vision and strategy, and then the difference between goals and tactics. So yeah. First, let's talk vision. And this, you can look up how to write a vision statement and all these things. And that's kind of a topic for another meeting. But really what I want you all to take away from this today is that vision is your purpose, right? Whether that's internal to you personally or whether that's specific to your business, but it's the purpose, right? It's the why behind what you're doing. And sometimes that's very customer facing and that's apparent to your customers. And sometimes, that's a personal thing that you keep within your business, and it's okay to be either one of those. But the idea is that that's your purpose, right? That's what you're doing and why. And then enter the strategy, right? So the strategy is your plan on how to achieve the vision, right? So how do you achieve what's important to you? How do you achieve what's important to your business? That's a strategy, right? And that can be, again, anything that falls into that category. But can you see how they're different? John, does that make sense when I explain that vision and strategy are a little bit different?
Yeah, it does. And maybe you could comment on this, Adrian, but I was, researching this topic a little bit before the webinar, and they did a survey. I'm going to botch the statistic, but 90% of statistics are made up on the spot anyway.
Perfect.
A survey of employees across America, big business and small business. They just asked people, hey, does your business have a vision? And does it have a strategy? And an overwhelming majority of employees shrugged and said, I don't think so. So, I think communicating this to your employees has got to be an important step in this as well. And it might be something that's really nice if you know the vision in your head, but that's not enough.
Yep, 100%. And we're going to talk about exactly that and why that is a key component of your strategy and your strategic planning, is to lay out the communication piece. And it's going to be different for each business, but we will cover that. It's very important. In fact, since we're talking statistics, and I can't remember the number again, but I do remember that it was a majority, and it's one of those things that causes workplace dissatisfaction when you don't have a communicated strategy, right? Unclear goals and expectations is the number one cause of employee dissatisfaction. That much I remember from school. Okay, so
that's above and beyond pay, compensation, and all other things too.
Yep. And just a full caveat here, you guys. This strategy session we're talking about here, and this idea of planning, it's one of those, I don't want to call it a soft skill, but it's one of those things that's so easy to push off when you're doing all the other things you have to do to run a business. But I really encourage you to make the time, and we'll talk about how to do that and why to do that in a little bit. But it's absolutely crucial that you don't think of this as a meaningless exercise that takes away from your business, because as business owners, we have to spend the time running our business, but also being in the business, right? And planning the business. So that's your role. It's your responsibility, being completely transparent. So, okay, goals and tactics, right? This is the most confused concept we're going to talk about today. So a goal is a measurable, attainable thing that is part of your strategy, and a tactic is what you use, the action, the physical thing that you or your business does to achieve the goal, right? And today we're going to talk briefly about SMART goals. Hopefully you've all heard this term, but the term is an acronym for simple, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based, right? Why is that important? Because your human brain is wired to want to succeed and want to win. And when you set SMART goals for yourself, you can understand exactly what you need to do to achieve that goal and how to win. And then once you get there, that gives you the foundation to set the next goal, right? It's not it's not a sort of pie in the sky thing. It's an actionable metric, and then you can measure your progress towards it. And if you're not progressing in the way you want to, you can change your tactics. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I just wanted to cover those, the main topics, and we can always come back if you guys have questions about the difference between goals and tactics, as I'm sure you will. Please pop them in the chat, and we'll come back to that. But now, the foundational part of this webinar, the purpose that we're talking about here, is conducting this annual planning, conducting the exercise. How do you do it? What are the ways in which you can actually fit this into your business planning? So the first thing you need to do, and again, this is something that's scalable from a solo entrepreneur all the way up to somebody who's got 100 or 100 plus employees, right? And the first thing you want to do is identify who your executive team is, right? And who are the decision makers of your business? Who are the people you really trust? Who are the people who manage the different departments? If that's you, great, easy to figure out. And if you have director of this or a director of that, also pretty easy to figure out. But sometimes it's not so easy, right? It might be a senior manager that you really trust or that handles a lot of those things on the side. But you really need to decide, and this is on you as the business owner, who those people are and what you're going to trust them with. Does that make sense, John, or what you're going to charge them with?
I love it. And I might add too, for some of the solopreneurs out there or people who are just thinking about starting a business, your executive team could also include people who are not necessarily in your business. For example, a consultant, that you would meet with who might help you to create this strategic plan?
Yep. We're a spouse, somebody who knows the business well, who can, who can challenge you without it being terribly risky to the relationship. Maybe that's not a spouse. I don't know. But yeah, it's almost, in my experience, always better to have at least another voice coming in here, somebody to challenge you. Therein is a great role for an SBDC consultant, somebody who, doesn't need to have answers, but can at least challenge you or push you, and maybe make you think about something in a different way. So anyway, so we're identifying our team and we're finding some time to meet with them. And this could be, well, in all honesty, this is a multi-day exercise. Okay. So in the same way that, when you make a big purchase and you want to sleep on it, your mind will digest some of these heavy topics overnight, and then you'll wake up feeling a different way. So I recommend at least a 2-day session of a couple hours each day, so that you can have the talk, let your brain chew on it, let your brain work on it, let things kind of percolate, as it were, and then come back. So if your business is time, strapped, this is what you do before the business. This is what you do after the business. But if you can, you really need to step away, step outside of the daily routine for as long as you can, for a couple of days, and really engage in this activity. So I can't stress how important that is. So whatever you need to do to be able to free up a couple of hours in your day for 2 days in a row, strongly recommend that as part of this exercise. So the first thing you can do is define and redefine your company's vision. That's really kind of the first thing, because 2020 has taught us that the world can throw a pretty huge curveball at you and you can still succeed or not succeed. But the idea that your vision remains true throughout all of these ups and downs and all this crazy stuff has to be kind of a fundamental planning aspect. So if it's changed, talk about why it's changed. If it's the same, talk about how it's the same or stronger coming out of 2020. But it's really important to define or redefine that vision and write it down, because that's the filter that you're going to pass everything through this planning exercise. Does that make sense?
About a term, mission statement. Is that the same thing?
It can, and it kind of not. This is one of those things where, depending on which business plan methodology you subscribe to, but when you talk about a vision, that's really the reason why your company exists. Okay, and some people, the reason their company exists is to provide them for a means of retirement, right, or something they can pass on to their kids. So the vision for the company is a little bit different than the mission statement, because the mission statement is almost always customer facing, right? The mission statement is, hey, when a customer sees my business, what do they see from me? And that's the mission statement. We make good cars, or whatever that is, that's what customers see. But the vision is really kind of a company thing, and that might be a great place for all of us to work, right? But it's not necessarily a customer facing thing, but it's your why, and your business's why are you around, right? So there is a little bit of subtle nuance there.
Nevertheless, okay, we're arguing for a written vision statement. Is that correct? How long does this vision statement need to be in an ideal situation, just so people who haven't done one before can set themselves a smart goal?
Yep. As you're all familiar with Twitter, I think 150 characters is a great goal. So more than 2 sentences and it's not clear. All right. So there's some interesting ways you can envision your vision statement. That's nuts. But one way is, you may have all heard this term, elevator pitch, right? The idea is that you need to convey as concisely as possible what you're doing, why your business is around, so that you can share that and it's compelling to other people and they understand it. So the concept behind the elevator pitch is, you hop on the elevator, you got 2 floors to talk to an investor. That's about 8 seconds. So how do you communicate what you are, what you're doing, and what you want in 8 seconds? So that's a guideline, but I would say if you can get it down to 150 characters, you have won that battle. And it may take a long time. I think that spending too much time on the vision statement during this exercise is not necessarily beneficial. If you can get the idea down, if you can get the concept, and everybody around the table is nodding and saying, yep, that's what we're doing, that's what we're here, that's enough for this to go on, right? You don't want to burn 4 hours across 2 days on 150 characters. That's not efficient, and it's not terribly effective. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then this next thing to do is something that you do it at the planning point in January for the year, but you also do it moving forward, and that's an after action report. You guys may have heard this term. John and I were both in the service, so it was near and dear to us. Everything we ever did, from taking the ship out of port, whatever, had an after action report. And the purpose of the after action report, that's how your business and your team self-analyze what they're doing, whether or not it's effective, or whether it was tremendously effective, right? And that helps you keep best practices and shed things that don't work. And so my recommendation is just to make this as simple as possible. Your after action report has to involve everybody at the table, right? So nobody can sit there and not say anything. So if you have 5 of your executive team there, everybody's going to contribute. And what you do is you ask for what I call 3 sustains, right? 3 things that we want to keep in our business, 3 improves, 3 things that didn't go so well that we need to improve. And everybody gives you 3, right? And so themes will come out of that. And you as the business owner, you as the central figurehead and leader, will take all those sustains and improves and decide which ones are the most crucial, but you record that, and that's information that lives on. And you do that for this holistic exercise as part of 2020. So you look at 2020, obviously COVID would be an improve, so that's sort of, trite, and it's not really part of this exercise, but, something you did to influence something. That's what we're looking for, right? Is that similar to what you may have heard of, John, or do you guys do that over at SBDC?
Yeah, we sure do. After every project, we have a meeting, and very similar. We kind of, start with just an overview to make sure that everybody involved in the project knows what we're talking about, and go through the timeline to review facts, as it were. And then we solicit input from everybody about things that could be improved and so forth. I'm not sure that we have a limit of 3 sustains and 3 improves, but I kind of like that, setting a target for people to strive for.
Yep. It's having a SMART goal for something as simple as an after action report, right? You know that it's complete because you can say there were 3 of these and 3 of these. If you only have 2 and 2, it wasn't complete, and you know that you need to go back and tighten up that process. So, the obvious unspoken part of this is that you're recording this and then going back to it. So I've definitely been, full disclosure, I've been part of organizations that are great about doing the after action report, but not great at going back to it. So the whole point is, when 2021 is over and we're strategy planning for 2022, then we have this breakdown of, hey, these are the things we said we were going to improve on. These are the things we said we're going to keep. How did that go? And that's how you learn, and that's how you grow. Okay. So the next step is, it's defining your strategy. And this is really it's got kind of 3 components, right? So you have strategy at the business level, and that's tied into the vision, and that's what is the strategy for the whole business, right? And then depending on the complexity of your business, you may or may not have different departments, right? Shipping department, receiving department, accounts payable, marketing, those things. Those different segments are each going to have their own strategies, but that all supports the business strategy, right? So, and then of course that waterfalls down to the individual work teams, right? The line workers who are actually executing for you, what is their role in all of this? So you kind of have to begin with you and your executive team having that conversation about, what is the business going to do? What is the strategy we're going to deploy as a business for 2021 to meet the vision, right? And then each department head, you as the business owner, you don't have to necessarily set goals for each department. That's what you trust your department heads to do, or that's what you trust your senior managers to do. So they just need to understand what the mission is for the whole company, and then they can set their own goals that are appropriate to that. And that's kind of how you as a leader can be efficient in your organization. Like, you don't need to set everybody's goals for them. You need to communicate to the next layer down what's most important and what they need to do, and trust them to create their goals, right? I'm going to pause there for a minute and John, let you kind of chime in there or see if we have any questions, because this is kind of, I work with a lot of solopreneurs and smaller businesses, and people really, they built their business. It's their baby. So they have a lot of knowledge about every step of it. And there's always a give and take and a push pull where people want to stay in their business. So I'm just going to pause for a minute. Do we have any questions, or do we need to talk about this idea a little bit deeper?
I think we're hitting it pretty good. I do see a question from one of our SBDC consultants, actually. John Jaggers is on the webinar today. Hello, John. And he's asking about the SWOT analysis for developing strategy, which
Sure.
SWOT, I'm sure maybe some of our viewers are familiar with that, but it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What do you think about that tool tucked in here, Adrian?
Yep. I mean, that's a great way when you're in that exercise of talking with your team about, what is our strategy. That is a well-known framework that you can use to break down something that's very complex and say, hey, we have this quadrant, right? We have strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So let's list them out. And then if we are unsure or that landscape is changing, let's look at how that's changed, right? Like, we're all going to have different strengths that develop or disappear over a year, right? So we want to look at that. And if you do have a list like that, or if you break things down into a quadrant, that helps you get your head around how to figure out what's the most acute need and the most critical problem you have. And especially, thanks for mentioning this, John, because the threats is a really good quadrant to spend a lot of time on. So I think opportunities feels pretty good to most people. Like, they understand the opportunities and like, oh yeah, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this. But when you start balancing that against the threats, then you can kind of push aside some things that maybe aren't as important as other things, right? And threats can be, they can be competition, they can be things like COVID, they can be, financially related, they can be structurally related, or even technology related. So there's a lot of good, that's a good way to facilitate discussion, and it's a good way to involve your other people, your executive team, right? Have them come up with these things, and threats that they see might be different from the ones that are in your head. So awesome suggestion, John. I think that is crucial. And there's a number of other good frameworks, right? Get on the phone and call an SBDC consultant. They'll walk you through the PESTLE framework and some other things that you can use to kind of have a more academic analysis of what your business landscape looks like. Cool. All right.
Fantastic.
So let's talk then about goals, because like we said in the beginning of the talk here, we've got a difference between vision, strategy, and goals, right? And goals are so very important to a good strategy. And to set important goals, to set smart goals, you really need to have a very good grasp of what the goal is going to do for your business, right? So the example that I like to use is just understanding how a SMART goal works. So if I said to you, hey, my business goal this year is I'm going to be more efficient and reduce expenses. Those are good goals. We all want to be more efficient. We all want to reduce expenses. But I can't achieve that without knowing what more efficient actually means and what reduce expenses actually means. There's no way for me to win that goal. And so it's kind of, it's meaningless. Like, that's a statement that every business wants to do. So let's make it specific. How do we do that? We say something like, I want to reduce overhead expense by 10% within 4 months. Now we've added the time element, right? We said, okay, we only have 4 months to achieve it. We said 10%, that's the measurable metric that we're shooting for. We said 10% within 4 months, 10% is probably attainable, right? I don't know your business specifically, but the idea that you can actually get there is very important. If I said reduce overhead expenses by 90%, that's kind of pie in the sky, and I would feel really daunted by that goal. And I don't know that that's really essential to my business. If I had 90% overhead costs that I could cut, boy, I don't know, I might be revisiting that business model. But that's the idea. I think you guys can see the difference there, right? The being efficient and reduce expenses sounds wonderful, but it doesn't mean anything. However, reducing by 10% within 4 months is hitting all those marks, right? I can measure it, I can attain it. It's time-based, the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sure does. And I think, one of the challenges with setting goals, one of the reasons that people resist the goals is that they're perhaps fearful that oh, if I set a goal and I don't achieve it, then I'm going to look stupid or something like this. So I think there is some wisdom in what you're saying as to setting an attainable goal. Is much better to have a specific but small goal rather than a general one that's meaningless, or one that's, as you said, pie in the sky and you're never going to hit. That can be very discouraging for yourself, very discouraging for your team as well. And so there's no penalty for setting an attainable goal and hitting the mark. I think you're setting yourself up for success, as the expression goes, if you do that.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of good points in there, John. This is it's a goal, but it's also a discussion with your team. All right, so it's not you necessarily dictating what the goals are. That whole attainable part, you need to get feedback from your team and understand what's really achievable. So I've struggled with this in my career. A lot of times working with unachievable goals, and it's demoralizing. It's not effective, and it's not good. And I think the kind of employee you want to keep around and the kind of planning you want to do is planning that encourages exceeding goals, right? That's what you really want. So if you can find a way to incorporate that feedback from your team, but also push them hard to achieve more than they set out to achieve, that's a really, really good feeling, and it's a very powerful recursive business driver. And maybe, I hate to say it because I I struggle with it myself, but Tesla is a good example of this, right? We all probably follow Tesla a little bit just because of how outrageous the news coming out of that company is. But one thing you see Elon Musk doing is pushing his employees to get car deliveries out the door, right? And regardless of how you feel about it, that's a great example of somebody setting a smart goal and then really declaring it to the world and challenging his employees and hopefully rewarding them when they get there. And obviously they're rewarded by a higher stock price and all of that, but he's got a specific defined goal that he says go for. And I might quibble about whether or not it's attainable, but that's just an example of how it works. And sorry, and John, back to one of the things you said early on there. How many goals do you think a business should have? How many top level goals do you think it should have?
I'm a big rule of three guy. I'm going to go with 3.
Yeah, no more than 3. Exactly. And that's a big challenge. And I can see probably you all shaking your heads right now that's not going to work, but it's very, very difficult to focus and achieve more than 3 priorities in a year, in a quarter. As long as you've identified things that are really meaningful and very important, you've gone through the SWOT analysis, you've talked with your team, and you've really decided on meaty, important, you may have heard the term, big, hairy, audacious goals, right? So if you have these 3 goals, that's going to take a lot of work. And adding 3 or adding more than 3 just kind of muddies the water. It makes it less clear about what's really important, and it gives people kind of an excuse to not achieve a goal at the expense of another. So from a mental space standpoint and just for an efficiency standpoint, 3 goals is your absolute max.
I don't want to get us off track here, but I got a question, and maybe you can talk about this. We're all assuming that we're going to achieve these goals and have a lot of good feeling, but in reality, there are some goals that maybe we don't achieve. And one thing that is very human, is very common, is as the deadline for the goal approaches, you could change the target so that it appears that you hit the goal. We weren't really going for 10% reduction. 2% was what we were going for, and look, we achieved it. And that's a mistake. But what's your advice for handling goals that maybe our team fails to achieve?
Yep. My advice there is you make it a process. And so by this, I mean, everybody who's got a goal is going to, in their mind, figure out how to achieve that goal, right? And so if you've set a SMART goal, one of the key components of that is that it's measurable. So you as the business owner need to create, or have your team create, that very simple dashboard view of progress toward goal, and make it a process every week to review that process. So if you have 3 goals let's say you declare these goals, and if you know, hey, I've got to reduce my overhead expenses by 10% within 4 months, then you set milestones within that 4 months and say, every week I will have taken these steps to reduce. That's my personal plan. That's my strategy. These are the tactics I'm going to take to do that. And you hold yourselves and your business team accountable. So there will never be a surprise at the end of that 4 months as to whether or not that goal is going to be achieved. And it may or may not be achieved, but you're talking about it every week, right? You're discussing it, and that way, that gives an employee the courage to do the right thing, right? They know that they have an opportunity to talk about what they're doing, how it's working, and why every week, and they know that that accountability is, if they're doing everything according to their plan, their tactics, and they're changing tactics, and they're doing their best, and the goal isn't achieved, you've talked about that and addressed it for 4 months, right? So nobody gets surprised at 4 months and says, oh boy, we didn't know this wasn't going to happen. Like you're constantly adjusting, using that new information, redipping it, figuring out how to get to that goal. So it kind of, I hope that answers the question, but that's the idea. Is it's such a process that if you do this in a vacuum and then only talk about it every 4 months, it is at risk of failure coming out of the gate. So it's crucial that you make it a process and make it something you talk about with your executive team every week, even if it's just via email, and say, hey, where are we at on our goals? Where are we at on our goals? What are you doing? And that way you as the business owner will know, I've got, dead weight that's not pulling their, I've got people who aren't pulling their weight, or I have, people that are exceeding. And also, just because life is life, you can revise the goal. It's something you want, but if you find that in week 2 you reduced your overhead expense by 20%, shoot, should you still have that goal as 10% in 4 months? Of course not. You would want to change the goal. So, right. Nothing is set in stone, but I think having a process and making sure that nothing slips through the cracks is very, very important. Does that answer your question?
Sure does. Yeah, I think that's probably critical to have this dashboard view, as you say. And that's one more argument for just having 3 goals max. You can't have a dashboard with 20 goals on it. Everybody's going to be searching all over the page for what's important.
Yep.
Keep it down to 3.
Yep. And this is done at every level of your organization, with probably the exception of line workers. And this is where that tactic and goal conversation happens, where at some point, people just have to do the work, right? So tactics are very important. And going back to the making it a process, the right tactics are easiest to find and change. So if your goal to reduce the overhead expenses again is 10%, and you start doing things like, being efficient here, being whatever you're doing there, like those tactics should be measurable, and they should be changing the outcome of the goal on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. And if not, you change them. But that's how you connect what you do on the ground to the whole vision of the company, right? It just goes right back up the chain. You go from tactics to goals to strategy to vision, just like that. So you can go onto anybody on your floor or in your office or wherever and ask them, hey, what are you working on right now? And they should be able to tell you, well, I'm relabeling all the bins in the warehouse because that's going to help us be more efficient, help us reduce overhead, right? And we want to reduce overhead because that's going to help us get to the vision X. And that's how you connect. That's how you connect, and that's how you really go from just scrambling around and trying to make ends meet or whatever, to actually achieving something. And it's going to be difficult. Obviously, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's a very powerful transition, and it gives you, the business owner, control over where your business is going, as opposed to just trying to keep it afloat. So I'm gonna pause there. We've talked about a ton of stuff. So if you're out there and you have questions, let's turn it over to you guys for a little bit before I wrap it up, because I think it becomes more real when we talk about actual life situations. So hit me with some questions, please.
Indeed. And while we wait for those questions, I've got a question for you. Mm-hmm. It's great to talk about this new year strategic plan review. January is the ideal time. How do you, as a manager, business owner, what's your advice to someone who hires a new employee in July, August of the year and bringing them into the company? How do you educate that person on the strategic plan?
Sure. My first recommendation is to have a somewhat organized onboarding process. And there's always a focus on, hey, I'm going to hire this person and give them dollars for their work. So I want to make sure I teach them what their work is, or hopefully trust them to do this work very quickly. So most business owners have their hands around that, right? But the onboarding process from an employee side is so much more. It's the HR part of it, right? How am I going to get paid? When am I going to get paid? What are my benefits, right? Every employee wants to know that. So you can create an onboarding process that addresses everything, right? There's a little bit of history about the company. There's what's going to happen from an HR standpoint. What do I expect of you? What are your personal goals? What are the business goals that you're responsible for? And what tactics are you responsible for? And it's just an easy thing to do. If I'm a big checklist guy. Have an onboarding checklist, right? So when your new hire comes on, you go down the checklist. Did I talk about compensation? Yep. Did I talk about their specific goals? Yep. Did I or did I talk about the tactics they're going to use to get there? Yep. Did I explain the responsibilities of the job? Yep. Then you just go down the checklist. And that way, no matter where they come on board, every manager is doing the same thing. Every employee gets the same treatment because they're all working off the same checklist, and everybody gets connected to that company's vision, right? And I'd also recommend that you encourage your company and your employees to have these conversations with their own teams on a frequent basis, if not weekly, certainly no more than monthly, so that as things change and as the goals are talked about, every employee is up to speed on what's happening. They're up to speed on whether or not they're meeting the goal or not meeting the goal. Because some employees don't get included in the planning process. That's just not what they do, but they still need to be connected to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And a smart person once explained to me that that's one of the few things that as a business owner, they will take the time to do that process personally with every new employee, no matter what level. They don't delegate that, just because when you have someone coming into a team for the first time, that's an opportunity to really set your vision as the business owner. And
Yep.
It could be a mistake to outsource that, because if
Sure.
someone doesn't get the message at the beginning, then they might not get the message ever.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, John Jaggers wants to know if do you publish goal results to all employees on a weekly basis?
Absolutely. I think you do. I think that you do. And I think that maybe, each business is different, but there's a transparency and a level of trust that people expect from their employers these days. And they want to know that what they're doing means something. So this doesn't necessarily need to be, every employee from the very bottom level employee to the CEO. Do they need to understand where all of the company's goals, each department's goals? No. If I'm working in the warehouse, do I need to know how HR is performing towards their goal? No. But you as a business owner need to understand that what makes that vision happen, those high level 3 goals that the company's working towards, that's everybody. And everybody should know how that's going, right? They should know how those goals are progressing on a weekly basis, so that their work means something. If you leave that part of it out, then people don't have an idea, and they just sort of lose focus and don't care. Like, why should I come in every day and pack boxes? That doesn't mean anything. Well, it does mean something, right? Like you set that goal for 2-day delivery this month. That's what you said you were going to do. So yeah, I get it, right? I have to pack 200 boxes today because that's how we're going to achieve our 2-day delivery goal. And that's how you connect it for everybody. And the unspoken half of that is rewarding your employees when those goals are met. That's it. Like there's money you pay them for the work, but there's also some kind of, whether that's goodwill, whether that's a bonus, whatever, but that's where you reward them. That's how you decide, hey, my employees really did, they did help grow this company, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, 100% include your employees on the progress where appropriate.
Fantastic.
Or yourself.
All right. Well, we're coming up on 40 minutes. We'll give people another minute or two if they have any more questions. I did put some notes in the chat for everyone, and I'll follow up with a video recording of this so that you can review it for all of the people who participated, and I'll include those chat notes as well. As I was mentioning at the beginning of the webinar, we do have some exciting programs coming up at the SBDC. So please do check out northmetrosbdc.com frequently, and you'll see our events calendar. We have a class coming up, the Peter Brissett's Digital Marketing Bootcamp, a very good opportunity to set some strategic goals for your marketing, for your business, and grow your outreach and your customer base. We have an Entrepreneurship for Creatives course coming up as well for people who are starting creative businesses, and many more free webinars as the year goes on. Adrian, thank you so much for this presentation. I think that we've got a pretty good framework here for people to conduct their 2021 strategic plan, both a review of last year and set some goals moving forward. I see a question here from Jennifer Pepper.
Right.
Curious what you think this falls under: vision, mission, statement, or neither. And here's the quote: "We believe in education, integrity, and excellence. We just happen to be great mechanics."
Okay. Well, it seems more visiony to me than it does mission statement. It doesn't. I mean, I get what you're saying when I hear it, but it doesn't tell me, until I hear the word mechanics, it doesn't tell me what your business is doing. So in terms of a mission statement, I feel like it could be enhanced if you could add what it is that your business is doing for people, right? I mean, if you're mechanics, that's great. So take that idea that you're mechanics with something plus, and try to communicate that, and it always comes back to value. What does the customer get when they work with you, right? So those are some ways you can think about it. I don't know if that answers your question, but these things they're not easy to do well. They take a long time, and when I work with people writing their business plans, we spend a lot of time doing this up front. Not thousands, but sometimes hundreds of rewrites of a simple 2-sentence thing to get it right, because words matter. My wife's in communications, and she'll tell you that words matter all the time. The words that you use, the way you communicate. So I like the idea. There's nothing wrong with it. I think you could just clarify and enhance it by really letting people know, if you want this to be a mission statement, what exactly it is as it relates to what you do, how you provide value to them. I don't know if that was helpful. Set up an appointment with me. We'll talk about it.
Sounds great. Amy says, "Thank you, great stuff." Jennifer says, "Yes, thank you." So, good times.
Yep.
Well, Adrian, I want to be. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, make this a fun thing, because when you start mapping it out, that's really you laying out your path to success, and that's how you can show yourself and your employees that you can be successful and that there is a way. So yeah, it's taking time away from the business. Yeah, it kind of feels like, I don't really need to do this, but actually you do, and it's a transformative thing to have a plan and work towards it, because you'll see very quickly that non-important items just drop away, and they don't matter, right? They do matter, but they don't. If you have an intact value statement, you have an intact mission, you've already identified what's important, you've got 3 goals, achieve the goals, and you will have success. Like that's the formula that there is. So take it seriously, really do it. But I think you'll find sort of that it brings you a little bit of inner peace when you have this in front of you, because for better or worse, you've committed to a course of action, and you know that you can communicate this to the people you trust, and that everybody can march on the same sheet of music. It's just not to be neglected. I can't stress it enough. I think I'm beating the dead horse here, but please please, please, please do it, and then call me and tell me how it went. I'd love to hear about it.
That sounds wonderful. And how best should people get in touch with you, Adrian? Through our website, or do you have another way that you want people to reach you?
Sure, you can if I'm available on the website, by all means, or you can shoot me an email at adrian.hovey@edwardjones.com, or just give my office a call and I'll put you in touch with me. Yeah, plenty of different ways, but for sure, if you want to talk through a mission statement or a value statement or something like that, it's one of the most fun parts of the job. So please do give me a call.
Fantastic. And I put your email in the chat there, and I'll make sure that's in the follow-up email message to everyone as well.
Good deal.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Adrian. It's been a very good review, and gives everybody a good assignment moving forward for the new year. And hopefully we can plan another webinar like this between you and me soon.
Great. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. We'll see you later.